Am I the a-hole for throwing away my daughter's scuba gear behind her back? I've never done something so extreme as a parent, and until now I never thought I could act like this. I am a single mother to a teenage daughter. I love her with all my heart, but I'll be the first to admit I can be sort of overprotective of her. When my daughter was still a toddler, I struggled a lot to raise her myself, and sometimes I feel ashamed when I think of the places we lived or how poor we were when she was younger. I was always an anxious person, but nothing makes me more nervous than my daughter's safety. Once when she was about 7 years old, I was watching her play at the park when I looked away for a moment. It was one of the most horrific moments of my life when I looked back to the park and didn't see her. It turns out she had chased a squirrel out of the park and into a nearby neighborhood. I called the police, and it took us hours to find her. I even got CPS called on me because of this incident. Ever since that day in my daughter's childhood, I have been very overprotective of her. She is now 17 years old, and she's growing up into a brilliant, accomplished young lady. My daughter is very outgoing and fearless. It's like she has all the traits I never did. She is an excellent student and a devoted athlete. Last year she won her school's track meet, and she is on track to graduate next year as valedictorian. I am so proud of her, but sometimes I worry about her bold nature. Even though what I did might seem extreme, I was only trying to protect my daughter. Anyway, over the summer, my daughter went on a day trip with her best friend's family. She ended up trying out scuba diving without my permission on this trip, and unfortunately, she fell in love with it. Even though I wasn't happy to hear it, she came home exhilarated over the experience and begged me to allow her to become scuba certified. At first, I said no, it was too dangerous, but she begged me and said she would pay for everything herself since she had a part-time job and promised she would be safe as always. Eventually, I relented, and she began the process of getting certified. She was so happy during this time, she started getting more interested in marine biology as well and would talk for hours about the places she wanted to travel to one day to dive in. I wanted to support my daughter despite my worries, so I joined her one day when she went to her scuba class. I can't describe the pure panic I felt as I watched my daughter go underwater and stay there for what felt like hours. I nearly had an anxiety attack up there just staring into the deep, blurry diving pool. I felt the same fear I did when she got lost as a child. I couldn't see my baby. I felt like she was gone all over again. As I waited for her to finish up her class, I knew I couldn't handle her doing this hobby anymore. On the car ride home, I cried and told her how terrifying this was for me. I begged her to stop for my sake. I told her that this hobby was just so dangerous and it would unalive me if she continued getting more invested in it. My daughter cried too. She said I couldn't hold her back just because I didn't do anything to manage my anxiety. She said she wasn't just my daughter, she was her own person with her own hopes and dreams. She said she had always been a safe and mature person because I raised her that way, so why couldn't I trust her? I told her I understood, but I still needed her to stop scuba diving as soon as possible. At this point, we were pulling into our driveway, and all she said was, "Get help, Mom," and she slammed the passenger door and stormed inside. I was a mess sitting there alone in the car. I had so many emotions running through my head. There was one thing I was sure of: I could not let my daughter continue going underwater. I could not handle this, and I couldn't just sit by and watch as her life got even more dangerous the closer she got to certification. Anyways, this is where I may have screwed up. I started the car again and drove to a nearby dumpster. I must have looked crazy, tears and snot covering my face as I dumped all of my daughter's scuba gear into the dumpsters. But I didn't care. All I cared about was keeping my daughter safe. She has class again next week, but I'll tell her before about what I did, even though I'm sure it will be another hard conversation. Am I the a-hole for throwing away my daughter's scuba gear behind her back? In my first post I spoke about how I threw away my daredevil daughter's scuba diving gear since she wouldn't quit by herself. I know my actions seem extreme, but I was just trying to protect my baby. I know I initially said that I would tell her I threw away her scuba gear before it was time for her weekly class, but I was so nervous about the confrontation I just waited till the day of. When it was the usual time to leave for her class, my daughter got in the car herself and honked the horn to signal me. I was so nervous, I knew that the time to tell her was now, and there was no avoiding it. I got in the car with her and said gently, "Baby, we're not going to class today. You're done with those classes actually." My daughter seemed really confused at first. She said, "No, I paid for the entire course and I'm only a fourth of the way through." I said, "No, you're all done with that, sweetie. Like I said, it's not safe." That's when my daughter started losing patience with me and said that she was either doing this now, or the next year after she turned 18, so I might as well leave her alone to pursue her interests since it would happen either way. That's when I started to get frustrated with myself. I raised my voice and said that as long as she lived under my roof, I would do everything I could to protect her even if she didn't agree with me. Things only got more heated, until, eventually, I let it slip that she didn't have equipment for class anyway, and she had no choice but to stop going. That's when my daughter's jaw dropped, and she checked the trunk for her stuff just to find it was empty. My daughter collapsed in the driveway. Seeing her so heartbroken like that unalived me, but she had pushed me to this point. The next thing I knew, my daughter got in my face and screamed at me like never before. She called me a neurotic beat. She said she was nothing like me and that I was a coward. She said just because I was weak and fearful of everything in life, It didn't mean she had to live her life in my overprotective shadow. I cried, but she just went on and on. Everything that came out of her mouth was crueler than the last. The last thing she said was, "How am I ever supposed to trust you again after this?" And stormed inside. I tried to follow her and apologize, but she just packed a bag and left for her friend's house. It's been a couple of days now, and she has slept at her friend's house the entire time without even checking in on me. She's ignoring my texts as well. I have her location, so at least I know she's safe. At first, I thought I was doing the best thing for my child's safety, but after seeing my daughter's reaction, I wonder if maybe I went too far. I looked into replacing the equipment, but it's expensive and ultimately, I don't want her to return to scuba diving. Even though it's damaged our relationship, at least I know my baby is safe and above water. People who work for high-end industries, what secrets could destroy the entire company if people found out? Ever wonder why you're never supposed to trust everything you see on TV? Well, I didn't, and it changed my life and body. I idolized models ever since I was young, especially Adriana Lima. She was the first model I remember as a kid from advertisements, and she was just so beautiful. I grew up wanting to be just like her, a model walking the runway in the most gorgeous angel wings and pretty outfits. So, I tried my hardest to make those dreams into a reality. I made sure to always watch my diet, exercise regularly, and keep my skin wrinkle-free and glowing. I thought that was all it took to be considered beautiful in the modeling industry, but I was dead wrong. Back in 2019, I was hired for a modeling job and the little kid in me was so excited. I thought I had a real shot at working there long-term and making it big like Adriana Lima. She was the it girl back in the 90s and she continues to be the it girl. That's all I ever wanted. But the PR team for modeling agencies are doing a fantastic job of making us seem more inclusive and respectful about body types. Don't think for a second that there's any actual body positivity. It's all for brownie points to disguise what actually goes on behind the scenes. I'll give credit where credit is due, they're on point about it. I thought I had the hottest body when I walked in on my first day, but the guy who took all my measurements the day I was hired thought otherwise. They're so methodical during their judging process. They'll tell you to eat less and less until you're reduced to a Yolanda Hadid diet, and sometimes even that isn't enough. At the beginning of every month, all models are given a list of targets that specify what measurements we needed to increase or decrease. A common one was that our thighs were too big or we needed to get rid of the belly pouch. You mean our uterus? My list contained various things, but in bold the words "flat chest" were written on top of the page. Apparently, my body was going to be used to promote bras. Thing is, my honker RB cups, which are already decent and big enough, but no, they told me to make them bigger, by 2 whole inches. This literally seemed impossible without plastic surgery, and I straight up told the guy who ordered me to fix my measurements that I wasn't going to do that because my honker could be used as they were, or they could just hire someone who naturally had more to work with, but he said that would mean hiring a big person, which was totally out of the question. This repulsed me, but I needed a job and they were paying well, so I didn't just walk out, which looking back at it, I should have. I said there was still no way I'd be able to increase my chest size. His response? Check your email. So, I did. And there, in my email, was an unironically honest list of supplements that my company expected me to take just to grow my honker size. The crazier part? Those supplements worked. I went up an entire cup size in the span of 2 years, and my girls are still growing. I no longer work for that modeling agency, but now, my agent has me working with a new designer who is even more particular about the supplements I take. He's sort of a freak about it. I tried to go to Walgreens to buy the stuff, but his requirements are so specific that he literally had to send me links for each one. He'll only let me take vitamin B supplements, biotin from some random Chinese company, collagen supplements from this random company in Korea, and most importantly B Vitality B pollen for my chest because he thinks my old supplement was hindering my potential. It sounded like a load of crap to me, but I guess my agent knew what he was doing though, because my body and skin have never looked so good before. But even though I look natural, please just know that everything in the modeling industry now is a result of supplements, diets, and pure wealth. Natural beauty isn't enough anymore if you want to survive as a model, it's just a starting point.